Unit 11, 11.1, Exercise 3.
Last week, Steve came into the studio to prove to us that life still has some happy endings. Here's his story. So, Steve, your relationship with Abby has been through some ups and downs, but is definitely on a high now?
That's right, and we're finally tying the knot next month. Just over 5 years ago, I met this bubbly little lady, Abby. We went out, shared some laughs, and pretty soon I knew she was the one for me.
And was it love at first sight for her too?
She was happy enough to spend lots of time with me, but treated me more like a big brother, if anything. She even told me about another guy she was hoping to get together with. At which point, realising I would get nowhere romantically, I decided I'd better cast my net elsewhere. I met a nice girl called Samantha, very down-to-earth, the opposite of Abby, and we started seeing each other once in a while. We had well-paid jobs and money to burn. After a good holiday in Spain, we decided to move in together. I think we both understood that it wasn't true love, but we rubbed along fairly well. Unfortunately, quite soon after that, Abby made up her mind that I was Mr. Right after all, and made this very plain to me, though not to Samantha.
How did you take this bolt from the blue?
It was baffling. I actually wondered whether she was joking. She used to do that, but I knew deep down she wouldn't pull that trick anymore. I rationalised it as her whipping up a fleeting fantasy. She had time on her hands as she'd been fired from her job and was on her own a lot. Her then current boyfriend worked long hours.
And there were displays of obvious jealousy, weren't there?
Yeah, we'd be at the same pubs, and there would be anguished looks from Abby across the room, deep sighs if she was ever standing next to me at the bar, that sort of thing. I misread the situation for ages. She's always had a streak of theatricality.
What was your reaction once you realised it was genuine?
Well, it dawned on me that I was calling the tune now. If I wanted it, Abby and I would have a life together. Otherwise, things would stay the same. It wasn't straightforward. There was Samantha to consider. She'd always been very supportive and loyal. For a while, I couldn't decide what to do. To fend off the problem, I threw myself into my job.
And did colleagues at work pick up on anything different about you?
Very much so. I'd never been that keen and efficient before. Although my daily routine was much the same, I was glad to get to work because it distracted me. But I made sure I kept my private life out of our usual conversations. As time went on, there was growing pressure on me to do something. For all I knew, Abby might give up in disgust.
Then, one summer's day?
Yes. One beautiful morning last June, I couldn't keep up the pretense any longer. I sat Samantha down at the kitchen table and blurted everything out. She was terrific. Far from holding back tears, she didn't even seem mildly fazed by the revelation that I'd been carrying a torch for someone else and it was over. Just rolled up her sleeves and started sorting out my life for me. Phoned my office to say that I was at death's door and wouldn't be coming in, then told me to get round to Abby's place pronto, preferably with a big bunch of flowers. She let me buy those myself.
And so Samantha walked out of your life and Abby walked in?
Yeah, Abby and I rented a cottage out in the country. Last summer was idyllic and, well, it matched our mood. We got to know each other properly, spent every evening gazing into each other's eyes at sunset and, well, I'm sure you can picture the rest.
Absolute rapture, straight out of True Romance. How wonderfully slushy. So, when did you finally pop the question, Steve?
I was at a big family wedding, one of my cousins, and Abby hadn't come. I think she had flu. Anyway, everything seemed to fall into place at that event. I managed to sit down with my mother and talk about Abby. Mum had been giving me the cold shoulder as she'd really liked Samantha and, social norms being what they are, had seen her as a prospective daughter-in-law. Anyway, she came round after our heart-to-heart and I went off to offer a lift to my cousin's old school friend who lives in the States. I hadn't seen him for 5 years. Well, he looked me between the eyes and said, "You've always loved Abby, so how come you're not married yet? Get a grip, Steve." So I did. Leapt in the car without him, drove back and proposed. It's funny, though, it had taken someone at one stage removed from my life to state the obvious.
Well, Steve, I wish you and Abby every happiness. You certainly deserve it.
Thank you.